Whilst I'd dearly love to claim this as one of my athletes, I must be honest, it's not. I thought I'd start this seminar task with a short clip of Chad Vaughan, an All-American weightlifter. The thing that always strikes me when watching elite lifters is not just the speed they can get into the receiving position, but the stability they have when they get there. For instance, in this clip of Chad, we can see how upright his torso is. Now this is down to a number of factors, but it helps create a mechanically advantageous position from which he can then recover the lift. Now clearly this athlete is extremely strong as well as highly practiced in this movement pattern. However, there are some stark contrasts between his movement and the movement you're about to see. This video was taken several years ago, close to when I first started learning the Olympic lifts. I'd like to think my technique has improved a bit since then, but I've chosen to use this particular footage as I think it really highlights my lack of motor control. As you can see, as I receive the weight, amongst other flaws, there's a definite lack of stability, which, as mentioned in the lecture, could be down to it simply being a new skill. Chad's lift, however, shows a much higher degree of stability. Despite needing to take a half step forward at the end of the recovery, he's noticeably more still in the bottom of the receive position, and consequently doesn't need to stay in this position in order to find his balance for nearly as long as I did. I must apologise for my crude use of video analysis here. I'm still getting used to the software. However, staying with the snatch receive position for now, I've roughly attempted to show the difference in back angles between me and Chad. This is partly flawed as the angle of the videos is slightly different, however I hope it simply illustrates the differences. Aside from the angle, one can physically see that Chad has the bar stacked almost directly over his shoulders, a much more vertical spine, as well as having his hips tucked in closer to his feet. Aside from this putting more strain on my shoulders and lower back, it's also far less efficient and will severely limit the amount of weight that I can catch. Interestingly, this seems to carry over to my overhead squat. If you watch the video playing now, the lack of stability on the way down, and indeed in that receive position, is very clear. Considering the overhead squat is inherently a less dynamic movement than the catch in the squat snatch, it should be expected that this lack of balance and stability would only be made worse by the temporary removal of connection with the ground, as well as with the increase in requirement to change position so rapidly. Despite this video being more recent, as predicted, the lack of balance and stability can still be seen. Whilst it's slightly beyond the focus of the seminar task, I think that this lack of stability may be partially motor control related. Also, it might be because I seem to be allowing the bar to creep too far forwards, and hence I'm catching the bar in front of my base of support. I think you can see this happening in the footage. Also, the small hops I take as I drop to the bottom position from the end of the second pull also act as a telltale sign. So to start tying this seminar task together, I wanted to attempt to talk about the lack of capacity, specifically in the bodyweight squat. I feel this is probably the root cause of many of the problems I have with that receive position, as it's such a foundational movement. I think there's quite a lot to potentially talk about and cringe at, so I'll only focus on two aspects I feel are most critical. As a side, this is how I would work with an athlete, as I'm a firm believer in applying a triage for correcting movement to prevent overwhelming. The first capacity I believe I lack in is balance. Clearly, in any sporting or athletic movement, effective contact with the ground is key. In this video, you can see as I approach and then leave the bottom position, there is a period of excess supination where the inside of my foot effectively leaves the floor, followed by excess pronation, where the foot rolls in and potentially puts the knee at risk of falling into a valgus position. Whilst a quick fix solution might be the use of ollie shoes, as the instep strap and solid sole would provide more support for the foot, I think in this situation it would be acting more as a crutch, effectively disguising the lack of balance. The other capacity I want to focus on is mobility. Whilst I think the lack of mobility card is often overplayed by coaches, for me, I think it genuinely is a real issue. The two areas that are my priority are my lack of mobility in the ankles, in particular dorsiflexion, but also my ability to exhibit external rotation and abduction at the hips. If I was able to produce greater abduction at the hip when in the bottom position, this would allow me to reduce the distance between my hips and the base of support. Not only would this create a more upright torso, it would also make it easier for me to stay balanced, as as my centre of mass would be stacked closer to my base of support.